All right. Well, I'll take it from here. Thank you so much, Nevin. As Nevin mentioned, my name is Lisa Gonzalez. I'm one of the career advisors at NOVAworks, and we are here today to cover mastering the resume and job application. Just a little bit about NOVA. We are a workforce agency in charge of the northern part of Santa Clara County and all of San Mateo County, and that also includes the city of Santa Clara. So thank you so much to the City of Santa Clara Library for allowing us to present this morning. A little bit about what we're going to cover today on our agenda is we will go over the resume and the parts of a resume. We're going to then pivot and go into job application basics. And towards the end, we will highlight how they are similar and how they are different. A couple of things to keep in mind is that employers, depending on the employer preferences, will request either one of these documents or both. And so you want to be ready and have your information handy so that you can apply to positions with either one or both of these documents, the resume and the job application. So let's go ahead and dig right in and start with the resume. And as Devin mentioned, feel free to put any questions that come up in the Q&A, and we'll have the Q&A at the end. So there are some pretty standard parts of a resume, and you're seeing those on the slide here. And this will be the format most of you follow when you do a resume, although there will be some maybe variations due to different emphasis and preferences, which I'll talk about. But typically the parts of a resume are your contact information at the top, then a clear objective, the summary statement, then your work experience, and education, professional development at the end. Now, some exceptions may be if you're a recent graduate or you do not have a lot of work experience, or if you are pivoting in careers, you might choose to move the education section up higher. But that's something that you can decide as you determine what you're looking for as your next step. So let's go into each section a little bit more, and we're going to start just with contact information. Now, this may seem like basic information, but there's some good points to consider here. You want to be very clear about how the employer may contact you on your resume. So you want your name, city, state, and we list that because you no longer need to put your street address. Most of these documents end up online or electronically, so you don't need to put your street address. You can protect your privacy. So just put Santa Clara, California. Phone number should be the number that you want the employer to reach you at when they follow up on that resume submission. Make sure the voicemail going out is very professional. That's something that we tend to overlook. Similar also is email. You want to be reachable with your phone and email, and your email should also be professional and up to date. So consider creating a secondary email just for job search. It also helps with your organization. Maybe a service like Gmail, which is free, you can create more than one email account. And then if your LinkedIn URL is, again, well-developed and ready to be put on your resume, you might also include a LinkedIn address as well. So good information to have at the top. Again, it's all about how will the employer reach out to you and contact you. Second, which I think a lot of people have questions about, is the objective. Different individuals may say, oh, I don't think I need an objective, or I heard you no longer should put one on your resume. What we're talking about is the job title or the position you are seeking. So that can be your functional area as well. The reason for this is it gives your resume a clear focus. It anchors your resume so that all content come back to the objective. It also lets the employer know what position you are applying to and how to view the content on your resume through their lens. So it is really important to be clear. In terms of applicant tracking software, so that's the software that scans your resume, having that keyword, meaning the job title or the functional area, will also be helpful. So do go ahead and put an objective or job title functional area there. What you don't want is an objective statement, right? So back in the day, people would say, oh, I'm looking for a position where I can learn and grow with a company. That's an objective statement. It's not at all about the employer. It's about you. So just keep that clear and precise. Summary statement. We are going to take a look at a few of these and show you how you can write a summary statement. This is a very important section. Think about what are the top reasons an employer would be interested in hiring me. And so this is a kind of a overview of who you are and why you're a good candidate for the position. It typically includes your overall years of experience, some job-specific skills, some accomplishments, and then some personal qualities. Now, we do have some hyperlinks in the slides that Nevin mentioned she will send to you. And I encourage you to go ahead and select those. I'm going to select the link here so we can see where it goes. It's going to go right to our NOVA webpage, and hopefully you can see the document it's allowing you to access. This is great. You can review this. It, again, reviews the summary statement and what the summary statement may entail. We have several examples of a summary statement, and you'll notice that they vary between a short paragraph format to a tagline that has maybe some bullet points or are all bulleted. The format is really up to you. You just want to make sure on your resume that there's nice white space, that text is easily read, that nothing's too crowded. So you can opt for either a short paragraph or bulleted points. And I'll just read one of these, and then I want to show you what else is on this handout that you can access. But let's say, for example, you were applying to an administrative assistant position. This summary right here is a nice way to think about what would I put as the top reasons, maybe top 3, 4, 5 reasons an employer would want to hire me. And again, remember you're putting some of those bulleted points up here, which are the years of experience, job-specific skills, relevant accomplishments, and personal qualities. So this administrative assistant summary statement says, over 7 years of experience as an administrative assistant working in fast-paced business environments. Skills include typing 60+ words per minute, proficiently working with MS Word, Excel, and presentation applications, coordinating and scheduling travel, special events, and projects. Dependable professional possessing excellent organization and communication skills. Now, where did this person get the content from for the summary? Probably took a big hint from the job posting itself. So grab a highlighter, highlight those key skills and qualities that employer wants, and make sure it's a highlight in your summary. As I mentioned, this document has lots that you can go through to help you write your summary. On page 2, we have an entire list of transferable skills. These are skills you take with you from opportunity to opportunity, or you're inherently good at. People have difficulty identifying their transferable skills. So do go through the checklist on page 2 and page 3. They're by category, so you can highlight what you feel you have. Page 4 is a list of personal qualities. Again, this is a difficult area for most people. And so kind of go through it, maybe ask a close friend or a family member what personal qualities they see in you so that you can identify them and include them if applicable to the position. At the bottom of page 4 here are job-specific skills. So those are more of those hard skills. So if a job asks for Excel, or it's asking for Google Docs, it's asking for a specific software program, you're going to go ahead and put those in there. If it's asking for a particular license, like a Class A license, customer service experience, you would put that as a job-specific skill. And then we have a worksheet at the page 5 of the handout where you can draft a summary of your own and have that ready to include in your resume. All right, so I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that. Hopefully you're seeing the slides again. I'm going to go ahead and continue on. And after summary statement, our optional section, but very common to list, a technical or a skills section. Now, keep in mind, if you're listing skills, you want to make sure they're current, that you feel comfortable talking about them, because anything on your resume is fair game for an interview, and that you are competent in them. So again, typically this comes in after your summary statement, and it is optional. Now I'll show you an example of how you can list these out. And this is just one example. So for someone who was more technical, they might choose to list their skills by category. So operating systems, languages, tools, office technologies. Now, if you were in accounting, you could change this. You could put, accounting systems, QuickBooks, or Excel or Peachtree. If you were in manufacturing, you might put specific type of processes or equipment you were comfortable with. So any career could actually list out their technical skills or their skills here. Again, keep in mind what the employer is asking for in that job posting and match that. And so it shows up as a keyword match on your resume. All right. So again, we've went through three now, a contact information, objective, summary statement. Now we're going to go into your work experience. And this is where most of you, I think, know you have to put your work experience on your resume. I get lots of questions, though, about, how far back do I go? How long can my resume be? So typically employers want to see experience that only goes back about 10 to 15 years. And that means you're going to have either a 1 or 2 page resume, 1 page, 1.5, 2 page maximum. There are some rare exceptions like government work where they might ask for more experience rather than less. But typically, you're going to only go back 10 to 15 years for private employers. So with that in mind, you want to make sure it's relevant to that objective. Remember, we mentioned that the objective anchors the document. So think about, the experience you're listing. Is it relevant to the objective I'm seeking? And this may be a term that looks unfamiliar. Some of you may have already heard of this term, but there are lots of acronyms that describe the same thing. A results action-oriented statement. You want to make sure you don't just list out job duties, but you have impact to that statement on your resume. We call them PSRs here at NOVA, problem, solution, results. Other places might call them stars or tasks or cars. I think Google calls them XYZs. This is also a link that you can access when you get the slides, and I'm going to go ahead and select it. It'll take you right to our webpage, and I'll briefly explain what a PSR is. So I just mentioned you don't want to only list a job duty. So let's say an employer was asking for someone who had experience processing time cards. Right? The job duty you might list on a resume might say experience processing time cards, right? That's okay. It matches what the employer wants, but it really doesn't say anything about you and how you do that task and how you might even excel at that task and rise above the competition. So we've outlined on this webpage kind of how to think about that job duty and expand it into a result or an accomplishment statement. So you want to think what was going on, what was the problem or the issue. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that was wrong. It just, what was going on there. The solution, what did I do? What was my role in addressing whatever it was that was going on? And then the result. This is the impact to the employer. What was the benefit? What was the end result? How did it show value? So that's the PSR, problem, solution, result. And if we brainstorm that same quality of, job duty experience with time cards, you want to maybe think it through with what was going on. Well, the problem was staff were submitting time cards with errors. The solution, what did you do? I created a spreadsheet that would automatically allocate staff time to correct charge codes. And then the result, what was the impact to the employer? Staff time cards were accurate, saving time on correcting and updating time cards. So you don't write that entire statement out on your resume. You want to then condense it to a statement that goes on your resume, for example, a bullet point. And what it would look like once you went through this brainstorming was reduce the amount of time it took to review and edit incorrect time cards by creating a spreadsheet for staff that automatically allocated work time to correct charge codes. That sounds a whole lot better than have work experience with time cards, right? It really shows how you did it, what you did, and why it benefited the employer. So when we go back to the slides and we talk about experience, we really want you to make sure your 10 to 15 years of experience that you're outlining on your resume is chock full of those accomplishment statements or PSRs. Because like I said, everyone who applies to a position is probably qualified for it. The goal of the resume is to get to the next step, which is the interview. So the employer has to make a decision. How many of these individuals who have just submitted a resume am I going to move forward to talk to or interview with? And these PSRs will help you get to the top of that list so the employer reaches out and wants to talk to you. And then, of course, make sure anything on your resume you're comfortable talking about because they will be used for the interview. And if I can give another plug to these accomplishment statements or PSRs, doing this exercise prepares you for the interviews because now you have stories to tell in the interview when the employer asks about these particular strengths or skills. You'll be able to expand on that example that you just provided. All right, so lots of things to consider around the resume so far. Typically at the end is your education or professional development section. Now here, you want to, again, think about what might be relevant, especially for some of you who might have received a lot of training through former employers, or maybe, again, a lot of people right now doing self-study. I know the library has some great self-study resources through Coursera and LinkedIn Learning for free to patrons through your library card. Maybe you found other things on your own. If it's relevant to your objective, I would include it under your education and professional development section. Now, dates you want to be careful of, right? If you graduated from college 20 plus years ago, you don't need to put the graduation date. You just want to put that you have that degree and it was received. But if you recently did some new training, maybe you got a certificate, went back to school, did some of that self-study, and it's within the last 3 to 5 years, you do want to put the date because it shows the employer what have you been up to keep your skills up to date, refreshed, on top of your industry or your work skills, and it tells a story. And so your resume does help you tell the story, especially if any of you have a work gap, meaning you're between careers, you're between opportunities. Employers will always ask, what have you been up to, right? So you want to have that on your resume showing you've done continued learning. I mentioned it's typically at the end because most of us went to school a while ago and maybe we haven't updated our skills or done additional education or training. But if you've done it recently, you might choose to move it up before experience, especially if you're doing a career change or a career pivot. So you do have some creative license with the order of the sections. For example, I mentioned that technical skills would go under the summary or skills section would go under the summary. I've seen people list that lower, depending on how important they felt it was to their current opportunity or position. Kind of just really quickly, that is the resume. And I do see there's questions. I think I'm just going to continue to hold the questions for now and pivot into the application. That way we have a lot of time to answer all of the questions at the end of the webinar. All right, so again, resume, a very different document than the application. And we'll show you how they're different and how you need to look at them differently moving forward when you apply. And like I mentioned at the beginning, an employer may ask for both. They may ask for one. Most of the time they're electronic, meaning you're doing them online, but there may be some circumstances where you're filling out a paper application. You go on site somewhere and they hand you an application, you fill it out. But the information I'm going to provide you here on the employment application is the same. First, review it front to end. So incredibly important to know what are you going to be asked. Take the time to kind of give it some thought, be ready to answer the questions. So review it from page 1 through the last page. Now this can be hard electronically, by the way, because sometimes when you log on, you're trying to get to each page and it's not allowing you to move on until you fill out that page. Sometimes we encourage you to create an account just to review the application and then use a different account when you're ready to apply. Of course, if it's a paper application, you're able to look through it all and then understand what you're going to fill in. So review the questions, read the fine print, and follow directions. We want to make sure you understand that sometimes the application itself can be part of the application. What I mean by that is they want to see if you're following directions. Have you completed it thoroughly and accurately? And it's part of that decision as to whether it gets moved forward. So pay attention to details, make sure everything is accurate. And it's really a good idea to have some type of master application that you filled out as a generic document, so that when you do need to fill out an application, you can just transfer the information over. Now, at the end of our presentation, I'm going to provide you with some links to the NOVA website again. And we do have a sample master application that you are welcome to download and fill out, and then just keep handy, because it can be hard to remember all that information when you're asked. And again, if you're doing it electronically, you can pretty much cut and paste the information over, or if you fill out paper applications, you can have that master application and then just copy the information over for that employer application. So that's really a good tip, because you don't want to start from scratch and try and recall all that information each time. Make sure you answer all the required questions. Now, most of the time, required questions have a little asterisk by them, right? This information is required. If it doesn't have an asterisk, or it's not required, you could just make sure that the employer knows you saw the question and put like a slash through it, just to show them that you didn't accidentally skip it or not see it. But you do want to answer all the required questions. And if you're not sure how to answer them, here are some ways you could answer. You can put in the word flexible, not applicable, NA, negotiable, open, willing to discuss, provide, or prior. Of course, that's going to be dependent on whether that category accepts like a numeric value, or is okay with kind of the alphabet being filled in. Sometimes it has a particular category it's looking for. But these are all good terms to use if you're not sure how to answer certain things being asked. And like I mentioned, you want to make sure that you answer each required question. Now, electronically, if you try to bypass a required question, it will reload. And I know you've probably seen this in red font. It might say, this is a required question, please answer. And so you're not able to continue in on the application until it's answered. But make note of how you might answer some of those questions. Keep a copy. This is another great tip, because sometimes, again, electronically, when you press submit, it disappears. You no longer have access to it. So you do want to keep a copy for your records. Job search can be really overwhelming in terms of managing where did I apply, what did I apply with, my copy of my resume, which application. So you want to stay organized. If you're filling out a paper application, of course, make a photocopy of it, or take pictures with your phone, or scan it on your phone so you have a copy, and then organize it however works best for you. But you can download it, you can photocopy, you can screenshot it, you can take a picture. I've done this before, where I've forgotten to keep a copy and then I wasn't able to access it. There are some sites where you can then go into your account and see the application, but sometimes not. So really good tip to just keep a copy. And so now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the job application sections. So there is kind of some complaints among job seekers. I just spent all this time on my resume and the employer's asking me to fill out a job application. What's that about? Or vice versa. The employer has my application on file. Now they want a resume. What's that about, right? Well, we're going to talk about how they are fairly different. Starting again, this is our sample one that you can download from our webpage, but it's very similar to what you may fill out. I think the whole first block is pretty basic, right? Your name, your address, etc. The question most people have is around if the application requests your social security number. Now, just because an employer requests your social security number, especially if you're online and you're applying, doesn't mean you have to give it, right? We should all be a little bit cautious about providing private information like social security number. So you do have options. As you've probably done before with different organizations asking, sometimes they just ask for your last four. So you could do, XXXXX and then just the last four. You could put all zeros. But you can also try and contact the HR for that department and say, can I provide that directly to you upon hire or upon interview? But again, just because someone's online is asking for it, don't feel like you have to put it out there. If it's a contract agency or a staffing agency, you really want to do your vetting and make sure you know who is asking for it. And then again, better to feel that you're giving it to a more direct, reliable source. And then remember, most applications will only ask for driver's license if the position requires that you drive and have a valid license. Otherwise, you don't typically need to provide that. So a couple things here, just if other people in your family work there, and then around disability, which is the last one. Are you able to satisfactorily perform the essential functions of the job for which you are applying with or without a reasonable accommodation? Now, when you apply to jobs, you should be applying to jobs that you can do. So this answer should usually be yes. If you have a disability, this is not the place you need to disclose. Now, there are some times when there is an additional page around what's called it's a tax credit, where it says it's optional whether you disclose a disability, and that there's an incentive to the employer if they hire individuals. Now, that is optional at the application stage. You can choose whether you want to fill it in or not. It's supposed to be separated from the application, but upon hire, when you fill out your onboarding documents, there may be something, and at that point you're already hired. So again, just keep that in mind. For employment history, which is the next section, and we'll go into what it might look like. Employment history typically should start chronologically, your most recent information first, and then go back. Background checks, which we'll talk about in a moment, typically go 7 years. So that's what you want to make sure you have on your application. And you want to make sure you have the company information. And I know in the Valley, especially, companies have popped up, they've disappeared, they've been acquired, they've went away. There's all kinds of scenarios. So think about where you worked and what it was called while you were employed there, and you are going to provide that information. You can certainly note in the comments if it was acquired and is still in business under a different name, but if it is no longer, you're doing your best in providing the information. So this is also where it's really great to fill out that master application, because this can take some time to track down, right? What was the name and the location and the main phone number? So you'll want to compile that data so you can fill out the application. And here's what it might look like, right? They're asking for your employment history, a name of employer, the address, start date, end date. Now they're asking for job title and duties. So there's typically limited character space here because it's electronic, right? So it might say you only have, let's just say 500 characters, 300 characters, whatever. So it's not likely you can just copy and paste everything from your resume. That might exceed the character limit and cause some problems with you being able to fill that out. So really think, for this position, what do I want to highlight, and customize your job duties and responsibilities so that it is, again, applicable to that objective and that position that you're wanting to pursue. Now, supervisor's name, title, and phone number for HR, that's usually employment verification, right? Did this person work there? What were their starting dates, end dates, and then reason for leaving. And we're going to go over some reasons for leaving that you can put. What you're not seeing on this employment history, which I hope you've kind of noticed, is it's not asking your past salary. And that is because there are now 2 California laws on the book, the last one passing, at the beginning of this year, 2023, that says employers are no longer allowed to ask prior salary. They can still ask about salary expectations and what you hope to make, but all information regarding past salary should be removed from the application. So, and then may we contact? Typically you say yes, but if you're currently employed, you might say no until offer is made, right? Because unless your employer knows you're looking for something else. Otherwise you would say yes. Let's look at reasons for leaving. You want to keep it positive. You want to keep it short. So you can put terms like laid off or furloughed, company closed, contract ended, we got a promotion, career change, relocation. Now, remember some of the safe responses we gave previously. You might prefer to discuss if there was something that you were concerned about. So you would go back again in your employment history about 10 to 15 years. Again, one exception would be government applications, which might ask you to go further. But for the most part, you're just wanting to put the accurate information down here. And then The next section of the application is education. And this slide kind of includes everything. But again, what they're looking at is if that position requires a certain level of education or a certification, do you have it? So it can include, if a high school diploma is required, you would put high school and then just show what date you got your degree. I don't think you have to put GPA. I haven't seen that being asked for in a while. Any college, if you went to graduate school or that technical training, certificate, additional schools. I would say put anything here that benefits you in terms of that position you're pursuing. And then again, if it's required for the position, this might be used for education verification. And then finally, references. So this is different than what we saw on the employment section. In the employment section, it asked for who was your supervisor and what was the name, or I'm sorry, the phone number to contact the employer. This section of the application typically asks for professional or personal references, and you get to choose them, right? So you get to decide, well, who are the references I would like to provide to this employer should they want to call them or reach out to them, email them, and ask them something about me. So very common on applications to have a section where they're asking you for references. So think about who you trust, who will provide positive information about you. Sometimes people have a former manager, supervisor they're willing to provide, but it can be a peer, it can be a colleague, it can be a client. If you've been in school, it can be an instructor. If you've volunteered, it can be someone you've volunteered with or someone who headed up that volunteer organization. So, you have options here. And again, typically references are asked about both professional information as well as, kind of what are you like? Are you easy to get along with? Do you show up on time? Those kinds of things. So pick people you think will provide good references to you. Don't let them be surprised. You do want to contact them ahead of time and let them know, hi, Nevin, I'm looking for a position and I'm searching for a new job. Is it okay if I list you as a reference? And then let them know a little bit about the position. Get their permission to use their name. And it's also really helpful if you give them a copy of your resume or give them a heads up if you interview and you think that the employer will then reach out and contact them, right? And a lot of times they might say, what do you want me to say? And you can also help coach them through that. So this is typically what it might look like on the application. You're listing their name. And then, the address I really haven't seen used. I don't think employers really mail references letters anymore. I typically see an email or a phone number being requested. So typical 3 is a number that you want to think about. So they'll call, this list once you are ready and they're interested in you. And I'm going to talk about the differences and when these documents are used in just a moment. The last section here on this sample application is the referral source. If you have an internal referral, meaning somebody who works there, somebody who knows someone, absolutely list them. This is going to give you an advantage. It's going to put your application into the top of the pile. Very likely they'll talk to you because somebody referred you in. It's really a great section to fill out if you have that referral. And then there's some information that they're just assessing in terms of their recruitment program and how well they're doing. How did you find out about this? Was it through an online ad or a recruiter or an agency? That's more, they're just assessing how effective their recruitment strategies are. Okay, background and credit checks, also part of the employment application. Now, we have a whole bunch listed here. It does not mean that all of them will be done, but these are the more common ones. Credit history, and there is a link to the California Fair Credit and Reporting Act because not all job titles will have a credit background check done. There are some very kind of specific circumstances where a credit check might be done. And if there is one that's going to be done, you will know it. They will ask your permission, and you are entitled to a copy of the report once it's completed. Other sample background checks that may or may not be done, depending on the employer and the position. It could be criminal history, the driving record. Again, if you need to drive for the employer, a drug test, your education verification, your employment history verification, different licenses. You know, if you're in nursing, if you're and special ed teacher and you have certain licenses you're required to have. They might check your references, social security number verification, and we put workers' comp record up here because it is public record. So sometimes people ask, will they know I had a former workers' comp claim? It is public record. Should they choose to look it up, they certainly can. But remember, you will always get a copy of the background checks that are conducted and the results that came of it, and then have an opportunity to correct or address. If you know that something might come up and you think that they're going to run these, you may want to preemptively address it. I think what employers are looking for is just honesty and kind of being forthcoming if there is something. And this would be a great time to talk about the difference here with the application. And I have this page here because at the end of the application, you're asked to sign it. It is a legal document, and they're asking, have you completed this, and is everything true and complete to the best of your knowledge, right? So you are signing it or doing an e-signature on the computer and pressing submit. So let's talk about the differences here of the resume and the job application, and I can dig into this a little bit. Okay, your resume, which we went over first, is your marketing flyer, right? You get to present yourself in the best light, almost as if you were looking at a wall of brochures and you picked the one that most appealed to you. So it still needs to be accurate and truthful and have really good information on it. But it's really, there's a lot more creative license with how you present your information in terms of the content and, what you choose to include. The job application, legal document. So you are saying, again, on that last page, this is true to the best of my knowledge and everything is accurate. Resume, you no longer have that line, which a lot of people used to put back in the day, references upon request or references provided upon request. References are not included on the resume. Job application references are typically required in part of the resume. The purpose of the resume is to get the interview. The purpose of the job application is for all those verifications and background checks. So with that said, job application information is typically not used until they're interested in hiring you, right? So they're not going to spend that time and energy and money to do an in-depth background check on you at the very beginning of a process. They're going to wait until they're interested in you and a candidate and they're interested in hiring you. So that gives you the opportunity in your interview to really sell yourself, right? You've sold yourself in your resume. You've now had interviews. You're talking to them. You're building relationships. Very common at that stage is when they do the background checks using what's on the employment application. Like I mentioned, if you have any concerns about what might show up, it's that relationship building while you're talking to them in the interviews that you would address it, get some guidance on how to approach a concern. So job application processes, background checks are very costly and time consuming, very unusual. In fact, I hardly ever hear where the employment application background check is done early. It's usually not done until they want to invest in you. Resume, 1 to 2 pages is the norm, 5 to 10 years of work history. Now with those background checks, employment applications can go back legally 7 years. But, if you're in law enforcement, you work with children, you work with elder care, they may go back further, and you'll know if they go back further. But legally, like if an HR department does a background check, it's 7 years. And the length of application can vary depending on the organization. But government in general can be longer both for resume and job applications. So hopefully this, and again, you're going to get a copy of the slides with all the links. Hopefully this provides you with some good information as to how things are a bit different with the two, but just want to make sure you understand these are two very different documents, but often requested together or one in lieu of the other. All right, and I'm going to just go here to my last slide before I open it up to Q&A. And like I mentioned, we have lots of resources available. These two hyperlinks you'll get, you can immediately go to and check out more information about what I just went over. The first link is going to talk about resumes, and it'll go through all those sections. There'll be a lot more templates and worksheets that you can access to pull a resume together. There's also resume samples. And the internet's a great place in general if you want to put in, sample resume for and your own kind of career title and see ideas and suggestions. But we have some on our website as well. And then the second link goes right into the application section of our website. And that is where you can download a sample application and fill that out as a master copy. So you have the data all in one place. And then there's more information about background checks, including a link to record clearance programs, more about what to expect around that California Fair Credit Reporting Act. So lots of good information. Now, a little bit about NOVA, where I work. We are, like I mentioned, a workforce agency serving the counties of Santa Clara and San Mateo. All of our services are free. We're government funded. You do need to register if you're interested in our services, and you can do that by contacting our front desk. But again, all of our services are free. We have a whole team of career advisors available to assist you. I'm going to go ahead and stop my slides so that I can pause here and then go into Q&A as needed. So let me go ahead and stop my share. And Nevin, if you're there, maybe you can feed me questions that came in.
Thank you, Lisa, for the great presentation.
You're welcome.